Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Ever feel like history is missing a few chapters? What if I told you there are lost worlds known only through whispers on clay tablets and forgotten documents? We know they existed, but no one has found any physical evidence. The search is still on for these forgotten civilizations that could rewrite history, one ancient text at a time. The Land of Punt. What can scientists learn by using DNA taken from mummified baboons? A lot, apparently. Scientists think they have finally found the mystical land of Punt, the realm shrouded in mystery where the Egyptian pharaohs purchased gold, incense, and strange animals. For a long time, scientists have speculated over the existence of the land known as Punt. It appears in ancient hieroglyphic texts, but the details are vague. The Egyptians mentioned Punt as being a valued trading partner. It's where the Egyptians got their jewels, spices, and even their ivory. But there was never any indication of where Punt was. Plus, as far as historians are concerned, no such civilization, city, or region ever existed. The Egyptians must have been talking about somewhere else, a place they knew as Punt, but everyone else knew under a different name. Unless there was an entire civilization that's gone under the radar. According to Egyptian texts, they started sailing to Punt 4,500 years ago. They set up a trading network that lasted for 1,300 consecutive years. Egyptians traded their grain, linens, and hardwoods for exotic products unavailable in Egypt. Nathaniel Dominy from Dartmouth College in New Hampshire said the Egypt-Punt trade relationship was likely the first example of international peaceful commerce. There are even historical records of a very special expedition to Punt. The most detailed depictions come from a mortuary temple in Deir el-Bahari dedicated to Queen Hatshepsut, the first female ruler to declare themselves a pharaoh. Commissioned sometime in 1493 BC, Hatshepsut's expedition to Punt was considered religiously and politically significant, as the ancient Egyptians apparently had lost their connection to the god's land over the centuries. Stone reliefs illustrate the expedition with scenes of Hatshepsut's fleet of ships arriving at a mysterious land, a village of beehive-shaped houses on stilts, all sorts of exotic flora and fauna, including myrrh trees and baboons. From there, caravans of trading goods were taken overland through what the records describe as the Red Sea Hills. Judging by this expedition alone, researchers are pretty sure the land of Punt was at the bottom of the Red Sea, in either Somalia or Eritrea. There were only so many places the Egyptians could have gone after disembarking at Suakin. Queen Hatshepsut's expedition was a major success. The things brought back from Punt boosted the economy. The Egyptians even managed to bring back entire incense trees, which they then planted to make incense for themselves instead of needing to buy them. The land of Punt was considered mythical because many of the things brought back from it were used in temple rituals. For example, Egyptian priests wore leopard skins that could only be purchased from Punt. Can you imagine a priest today wearing leopard skin? There were even rumors that the goddess Hathor came from Punt, and so did the dwarf god Bes. Sadly, not all the things brought back from Punt were as innocent as incense trees. There is an inscription tablet from the reign of King Sahure, circa 2450 BC, which mentions a different profitable expedition to Punt. This expedition was 4,400 years ago. The Egyptian traders returned with 80,000 measures of myrrh, 6,000 measures of electrum, 6,000 measures of timber, and 6,000 human slaves. The Egyptian slave industry was huge and continued into modern times. Did you know that during the American Civil War there was a global cotton shortage? Egypt rose to the occasion and became one of the new major cotton producers. The work of growing and harvesting the crop fell into the shoulders of slaves, specifically black slaves who had been transported in caravans along trans-Saharan land routes since anyone could remember. About 94% of their slaves were from Sudan and South Sudan, along with parts of Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, Congo, Rwanda, and Tanzania. But let's get back to the baboons. In 2020, Nathaniel Dominy and his team of scientists studied the mummified remains of baboons from about 1550 BC. By mapping out their isotopic signatures, they traced the baboons back to Eritrea and Somalia. It's highly likely the baboons were purchased from the Land of Punt, which places it squarely in this very specific part of Africa, just north of Ethiopia. But physical proof of Punt still hasn't been found. Lioness. The ancient lost city of Lioness is the other Atlantis, the one most people have never heard of before. It appears in legends, fairy tales, and folklore from the British Isles. And just like Atlantis, Lioness was a mighty city that met its fate at the bottom of the sea. According to new archaeological findings, Lioness may have been a real place. It's a popular location in Arthurian legends. It was said to be a long stretch of land sticking out from the southwestern tip of Cornwall, a place known as Land's End. Lioness stretched all the way to the Isles of Scilly in the Celtic Sea, not to be confused with the island of Sicily. The people lived in peaceful towns and villages, there were churches and farms. The realm had everything you would expect from a medieval kingdom. Ancient sources place several folk heroes as coming from Lioness, such as Tristan, one of the Knights of the Round Table in Arthurian lore. Tristan's father, Meliodas, was king of Lioness. Just before Tristan rose to take the throne from his father, his homeland sank. It happened in a single night, with all of Lioness being sucked into the sea as if by the great watery hand of Poseidon. Historians have a tough time separating fact from fiction when it comes to this ancient place. It's one of the weirder legends because it has a specific date attached to it. It's not like Atlantis that happened roughly 12,000 years ago, give or take 5 centuries. The catastrophic event that destroyed Lioness allegedly occurred on November 11th, 1099. But the story also has echoes of other myths inside of it. You likely know that Atlantis was destroyed by the gods. Well, so was Lioness destroyed by God. Why? God destroyed the city like he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because its people committed terrible sins. There was only a single survivor. One man escaped the storm, and his name was Trevelyan. He had been out hunting earlier in the day and fell asleep under a tree. He woke up to the sudden crashing noise of the waves and ran his horse to higher ground. He looked down and saw the waves sweep over his beloved homeland. That's just a myth, right? Or is it? One of Cornwall's oldest families is the Vivian family. They claim to be descendants of Trevelyan and the only surviving blood of the Lioness people. Fishermen have been claiming to find glass, forks, and random artifacts in their fishing nets for years. The fishermen believe these relics are from the lost land of Lioness. In 2009, the Lioness Project was launched by the Cornwall Council and English Heritage. A team of academics searched for proof that the ancient land existed. And while they couldn't find physical evidence, they did learn that the Isles of Scilly were once part of a single big island. This blew everyone's mind. It turns out there was a massive island off the coast of England that could have been home to an entire civilization. It existed in 3000 BC, but a rapid rise in sea level caused the lower lands to sink. Could this ancient island have been home to a medieval kingdom? Scholars favor the idea of post-glacial melting causing waters to rise worldwide. Interestingly, Doggerland, the landmass connecting Britain to Europe, also disappeared around the time of the melting ice sheets, which lends credibility to the theory. Given the rapid melting of the ice sheets and the rising sea levels that followed, it's entirely possible that was the same event that caused Lioness to disappear at such a quick pace. And now for a short break because it's shoutout time! I wanted to give a huge thank you to Palame and I'm Him for supporting this channel. Thank you so much! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to join the Origins Explained family. Ubar and the ad. Is this a story of myth or reality? Let's keep on with the theme of ancient lands being destroyed by gods. The Empty Quarter, a vast expanse of sand where the sun beats down with relentless fury, hides a secret. Deep within its unforgiving embrace lies a city, a legendary metropolis rumored to have once thrived in this inhospitable land. For hundreds of years, archaeologists have searched desperately. It's been glimpsed here and there, but no one has ever touched it. Many scientists think the legendary city of Ubar is nothing but an intangible mirage. Ubar was a majestic city built in the inhospitable wasteland of the desert by a tribe known only as the Ad. There's very little information about this ancient culture. They are mentioned only briefly in the Quran. According to Islam's holy book, the city of Ubar was destroyed by God. The people had abandoned the teachings of their prophet, and so they were punished. A verse in the Quran says, "Hast thou not seen how thy Lord did with Ad, Iram of the pillars, the like of which was never created in the land?" Another name for the city of Ubar is Iram of the pillars. The names seem to be interchangeable, so no one knows which is correct. The ancient place also appears in 1001 Arabian Nights, with this version of the story being at least 1,000 years old. In 1001 Arabian Nights, a man searching for his lost camel comes across a great city in the desert. It has a large castle rising high into the sky and is rich in shining pavilions and palaces. The man later learns that the city is known as Many-Columned Iram, and that it was created by Shaddad, son of Ad, king of the world. Shaddad was punished by God for his arrogance at creating such a lavish city. God destroyed Iram, aka Ubar, and made its ruins impossible to find. The city has remained impossible to find ever since, and that's not for lack of trying. In the 20th century, Lawrence of Arabia himself proposed an expedition to find Ubar in the Rub al-Khali desert, and maybe he would have if not for his motorcycle accident in 1935. Lawrence of Arabia called this lost city Atlantis of the Sands. Bertrand Thomas was the first British man to cross the empty quarter. He, just like Lawrence of Arabia, was convinced that Ubar and the people of Ad were real. He encountered Bedouin guides who told him of a road to Ubar, a ruin rich in treasure, but in the deepest part of the desert. Bertrand wanted so badly to find Ubar, but he never did. Neither did British explorer Harry St. John Philby when he crossed the empty quarter in 1932. By the 1940s, people started to lose interest in the ancient people of the desert. Then something amazing happened in 1944. A Royal Air Force transport plane flying to the southern coast of Oman got lost over Arabia. The pilot found himself flying above the empty quarter, nearly out of fuel. As he looked down from his window, he spotted the ruins of a gigantic fortress situated on the top of a flat mountain. His testimony was later recorded by an airman at the RAF base when he finally landed. This other airman was Raymond O'Shea. O'Shea was so excited about his fellow pilot's story that he used his 2-week vacation to hire guides and try to find the fortress. He never did. The city of Ubar, if that's what his friend really saw, eluded him at every turn. Do you think Ubar will ever be found? Let me know in the comments below. The cold strangers of the north. Long ago, the ancient Greeks imagined two mysterious lands far to the north, in what they believed to be the very edge of the known world. One was the island of Thule, and the other was Hyperborea, where a strange race of people lived. Hyperborea first appeared in stories over 2,400 years ago. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote about even older tales that mentioned these Hyperboreans. He said that Homer and Hesiod, two famous poets, had also written about them before he did. A poem by Aristeas, written around the 7th century BC, described a journey to the Kazakh steppe. There, an ancient tribe called the Isidonis lived. We know very little about them, but some scholars think they might have come from Siberia or Central Asia. The Isidonis were just as mysterious as the Hyperboreans. We mainly know about both cultures from old stories. Recently, archaeologists found graves in southern Siberia where people had been cut into pieces. This matches Herodotus' description of the Isidonis as cannibals. You probably didn't expect me to take this story in this direction, did you? The Greeks believed in all sorts of strange creatures and people beyond the Isidonis. Aristeas' poem mentioned the Arimaspians, who were essentially Cyclops, a tribe of one-eyed people who lived in the foothills of the Riphean Mountains. Beyond them were the Griffins, mythical beasts with a lion's body, an eagle's head and wings, and the strength of an elephant. Finally, at the very top of the world lived the Hyperboreans. They lived in a land of eternal snow and cold. They were said to be the favorites of Apollo, the sun god. A little ironic, but okay. For centuries, scholars have argued about whether Hyperborea really existed. Some think it's just a myth, while others believe the ancient writers were talking about a real tribe in northern Europe or Asia. The invisible island of Buan. We've learned about the Cornish Atlantis and about the Atlantis of the Sands, so it can't hurt to introduce you to the Slavic version of Atlantis, a legendary island civilization that's invisible. Being invisible has made Buan very difficult to find. The island of Buan is said to be located somewhere in an ocean, and that's about as close as I can pinpoint it. For the ancient Slavs of Eastern Europe, Buan was a sacred place. They believed it to be the very first piece of land that rose from the endless waves of the primordial ocean at the beginning of time. How mystical is that? Some legends say the island has the ability to appear and disappear with the tide. It's almost like it doesn't want to be found. The island of Buan is featured in many famous myths. Koschei the Deathless keeps his soul of immortality hidden there, locked inside a needle placed inside an egg in the mystical oak tree. Other legends call the island the source of all weather, generated there and sent forth into the world by the god Perun. 3 brothers, northern, western, and eastern winds live there, and also the solar goddesses Zoryas. Buan was where all the seeds of life were stored. At the center of the island was a brilliant stone altar made of pale white rock. From the altar flowed healing rivers that spread like veins across the island. The magical stone altar marked the center of the entire universe. The altar was guarded by a miraculous bird with an iron beak and a rather large snake. A large snake and a mystical garden make you kind of think about Eden, right? But the story of Buan almost certainly predates the biblical tale of Adam and Eve. It's just something to consider. Could Buan have really been an invisible island occupied by gods? The answer is going to surprise you. Today, historians think the mythical island of Buan is connected to the real island of Rugen. Buan might just be another name for the island, which for 500 years was home to a scary cult. Starting around the 7th century AD, Rugen was a cultic site for the Slavic tribe called the Rani. The tribe lived on the island and kept to themselves. They practiced strange rituals up until 1168. That was when the Danish showed up, burned down the temple, and wiped out the tribe. This was a serious tragedy. The Rani were one of the most powerful of the Slavic tribes in the area. They were also one of the last remaining practitioners of paganism in all of Europe. Some of the Rani's ruins can still be found at Cape Arcona on the island of Rugen today. The pasty white giants of America. Tribes across North America used to believe in a race of pale-skinned giants. Native American tribes, separated by thousands of miles, passed down the same stories of a race of giants. But are these just stories or something else? The Choctaw tribe has an interesting version of the tale. According to their origin myth, there was already a race of giants living in Tennessee when their ancestors arrived from the west. This would have been thousands of years ago. The Choctaw called these giants Nahulo and claimed they were several times larger than ordinary men. Once Europeans arrived, Nahulo became a word to describe all white people. That's because the giants of old had also been white. Somewhere along the line, the word lost its original meaning. The Choctaw may have lived peacefully with the white giants, if not for the fact that they were violent cannibals. When the Choctaw first crossed the Mississippi River, the giants were waiting for them. Whenever the opportunity came up, the giants would slaughter whole Choctaw hunting parties and eat them, bones and all. The Comanche of the Great Plains had a similar problem. One of the most famous accounts of giants in America came from Chief Rolling Thunder of the Comanche. In 1857, Rolling Thunder told his tale. He said that innumerable moons ago, a race of white men who stood 10 feet high and who were more powerful than any modern white man today lived across the country. These giants had sprawling cities that crawled up the sides of mountains and down into the deepest valleys. They were more technologically advanced than any civilization before them and any civilization that came after. These giants were also very warlike and didn't hesitate to kill and eat whenever faced with easy prey. Neither the giants of the Choctaw or the Comanche would survive to meet Europeans. Chief Rolling Thunder said that the mysterious race of giant men forgot their justice and their mercy. They became too proud and too vile, and so the Great Spirit wiped them out. Rolling Thunder said that all that remains of the giants today are the massive earthen mounds in multiple American states. especially near the Mississippi River. There are mounds at places like Moundville, Alabama, Cahokia, Illinois, Etowah, Georgia, effigy mounds in Iowa, and many, many more. Archaeologists say that these mounds were built by the prehistoric mound builders, but Native American legends suggest giants. Meluha and the Copper Crown. In the small Indian village of Chandayan in the state of Uttar Pradesh, archaeologists discovered a copper crown. It's an object of immense importance, linked to a civilization historians know almost nothing about. Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, Dr. Rakesh Tiwari, said this is only the second crown of its kind ever found in India or Pakistan. It comes from the Indus Valley civilization, but who it belonged to is anyone's guess. Dr. A.K. Pandey from the excavation said the person wearing the crown may have been important in their society, but Dr. Pandey is just guessing. There is no proof that the crown belonged to a ruler. It may have been nothing but a hat. Maybe copper crowns were all the rage 4,000 years ago in India. This is the problem with the Indus Valley civilization. Archaeologists know very little about their culture, their belief system, or their history. It's unclear where they came from, what they did while they were around, and where they went when their civilization collapsed. At the dawn of human civilization, there were 4 major cultures. There were civilizations in China, India, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. The only one of these cultures still giving scientists a hard time is the one in India. The Indus Valley writing system has never been deciphered. There are writings, but nobody can read them, despite their best efforts and the most recent technology. The Indus culture was spread across 930,000 square miles. That's bigger than all of Western Europe, meaning their empire was larger than Germany, Spain, and France combined. What about writings from other cultures? Surely an empire of this size didn't fly under the radar of Mesopotamia and Egypt, or did it? Only the most basic of evidence has been found connecting Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley. A few pieces of writing from Mesopotamia mention a place called Meluha. It's the Punt problem from Egypt all over again. Ancient Sumer had a trading partner they called Meluha, but there is no record of a civilization by that name anywhere in the world. Scientists think Meluha could be the Indus Valley, but it's only an idea. Meluha could be some other civilization that no one has found yet. Thule. The Greeks wrote of these strange Hyperboreans in the north beyond the realm of cannibals, griffins, and cyclopes. They also wrote about the island civilization of Thule. Thule was said to be at the northernmost part of the inhabited world. The first historical record of a place called Thule comes from the writings of Pytheas of Massalia. He was an extensive traveler, a man who loved to explore. After a series of travels between 330 and 320 BC, Pytheas wrote a book about all the things he had seen. In that book, of which no original copy survives today, he mentioned going to the land of Thule, but he didn't describe it as any ordinary land. He said it was a mixture of land, sea, and air, the consistency of a jellyfish. The land of Thule was all gelatinous and squishy, and you couldn't walk on it or sail across it. Maybe he just found a really big jellyfish, or maybe he sailed so far north that he encountered a sea of slush. Not quite frozen, but not quite thawed. He may have reached an ice field and could no longer go on. This frozen, slushy landscape may have been Pytheas' Thule. First-century astronomer Geminus of Rhodes claimed that Thule was a place where the sun went to rest. A handful of other ancient astronomers agreed that Thule was a place of endless sun, where night only lasted for 2 hours. Although there are some contradictory reports, others claim that Thule was a land of darkness where the sun never shone and where night was eternal. It sounds a lot like Thule was the Arctic region. It may have also been Iceland. The ancient writer Orosius claimed that Thule was north and west of Ireland, which is exactly where Iceland is. Even modern scholars can't agree. Lennart Meri suggested in 1976 that Thule is actually located in Estonia and is the island of Saaremaa. Others say Thule is the island of Smolla in Norway. Where do you think it was? And who do you suppose lived in this icy land of extremes? More giants in America. Back to the giants. The earthen mounds across the USA, the ones said by the Comanche to be graves of giants, were sometimes broken into by farmers in the 19th century. When a farmer started to develop his property, he had to get rid of all the hills. What do you think farmers found when they bulldozed the earthen mounds? If you guessed giant skeletons, you would be correct. Skeletons anywhere from 7 feet to 20 feet tall were reported throughout the United States, but they are gone today, nowhere to be found. It's been suggested that a crack team of scientists from the Smithsonian collected and disposed of all giant evidence found in America. If you search for proof of giant human skeletons, one of the first people you'll come across is Ailes Herdlicka. Ailes was the curator of anthropology at the Smithsonian in 1934. He was also the one who debunked the claims of giant skeletons being found. Ailes fiercely opposed the myth of an ancient white race of giants. Do you know who did believe in giants? I'll give you a hint. He wore a really tall hat and had a bad day at the theater. Check out this quote from Abraham Lincoln. While talking about Niagara Falls, he said, "Then as now Niagara was roaring here, the eyes of that species of extinct giants, whose bones fill the mounds of America, have gazed on Niagara as ours do now." He was a firm believer in the earthworks of the Mississippi Valley being the graves of giants. And who wants to argue with Lincoln? Just for fun, let's say that giants did exist. There isn't any physical proof today, only what's written in the past. So where did the race come from? And where did they go? Some believe they were the Nephilim, as is written in the Bible. There are scholars who claim that the Nephilim survived the biblical flood outlined in the book of Genesis. They were warlike, just like the white giants spoken of by the Choctaw. The Nephilim were also savage cannibals who would have had advanced technology. Maybe the Native Americans really did fight back against the Nephilim or a race of giants. But until we can find more skeletons under a mound, it remains a mystery. The lost city of Thinis. Before the Great Pyramids of Giza were constructed, before the pharaohs built the shining cities of Thebes and Memphis, there was chaos. Out of that chaos came the city of Thinis, a legendary capital that is only known in ancient writings. Egypt didn't start out as a consolidated kingdom. There were two different Egypts, Upper and Lower. In 3100 BC, they were unified for the first time. This led to the creation of a civilization that, although long gone, will never be forgotten. When Upper and Lower Egypt were joined, the first king built a central capital. His name was Menes. He ruled in the very first dynasty of Egypt. At the start of the empire's history, he was the first pharaoh, the leader of the Thinnite Confederacy. The Confederacy started out as a group of tribes when Egypt was still split in half. Menes united the tribes, turned the Confederacy into a kingdom, and stretched its borders along the length of the Nile. Menes then established a new capital that he named Thinis, likely after the Thinnite Confederacy. It would serve as the capital of the new kingdom for the following 5 centuries. Archaeologists know that Thinis most likely existed because writers mentioned it. Ancient authors like Manetho, an Egyptian priest. Thinis also appears in some of Egypt's earliest religious books, like the Book of the Dead. Despite its multiple mentions in historical texts, there aren't any details revealing where the city stood. Archaeologists think that Thinis was somewhere near Abydos, or maybe it's currently buried under the modern city of Jirga. Abydos would make the most sense because it is one of the oldest known cities in Egypt. You might be wondering how the capital city was lost in the first place. Let me fill you in on some desperate times in Egyptian history. At the end of the Second Dynasty, around 2650 BC, Thinis began to shrink. It was a time of great turmoil, and the new pharaohs were desperate to restore order. This resulted in the founding of a new capital called Memphis, built far to the north. But the records show that Thinis didn't fade away into obscurity. There are tax documents from the rule of Thutmose III in the 18th dynasty showing the annual taxes imposed on Thinis. The city had to pay the crown gold, cattle, grain, honey, and silver. They were still wealthy 1,500 years after Egypt was founded and 1,000 years after the capital moved to Memphis. They were even wealthier than Abydos, whose tax records show it only had to pay 65 sacks of grain to the crown, whereas Thinis had to fork over gold and honey. The Egyptian priest I mentioned earlier, Manetho, lived during the Ptolemaic dynasty. That was around the 3rd century BC, almost 3,000 years after Thinis was was founded. During Manetho's life, the city was still standing. Nobody knows when Thinis disappeared, why it crumbled, or where it is now. There are so many records of it, and not a single solid piece of evidence to prove it existed. I can even tell you the names of people who lived in the city. There are records of a temple in Thinis dedicated to Anhur, one of the Egyptian gods of war.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. The Nebra Sky Disc. In 1999, a group of amateur treasure hunters discovered an ancient bronze disc near the German town of Nebra. Measuring 13 inches in diameter and weighing around 4.4 pounds, the blue-green artifact features a crescent moon, 2 gold bands, with one possibly representing the horizon, and either a sun or a full moon. The group severely damaged the artifact while excavating it, then tried to illegally sell it to local archaeologists, who became suspicious and contacted law enforcement. Swiss authorities caught up to the criminals in 2003 after they tried to sell the disc to an undercover agent posing as an antiques dealer. Experts have struggled to trace the origins of the object, partially because it was not unearthed by professionals, who did not get the chance to explore the site immediately upon the discovery. The Nebra Sky Disc was originally dated to 1600 BC, which would make it around 3,600 years old, and qualify it as the oldest known depiction of the heavens. Many scholars disagree with this proposed date, and some have even alleged that the object is a fake. After all, with so little to go on, they have no way to learn about the mysterious prehistoric people who created the disc. A study published last year suggests that the Nebra Sky Disc is around 1,000 years younger than previously believed. The research also argues that the artifact lacks the deep meanings that other experts have assigned to it. Perhaps the most bold claim put forth in the study is that the disc was not discovered near Nebra. This sparked outrage among Germans, who value the object as a national treasure. Instead, the researchers believe that the Nebra Sky Disc dates back to sometime between 2,800 and 2,050 years old, during the Celtic Iron Age. They think that there may have been some confusion between law enforcement and the illicit treasure hunters, thus landing professionals at square one when it comes to identifying the disc. Sadly, without access to the original archaeological site, they may never be able to put it into proper context or identify the society that it belonged to. Coventry Cubes. While magnet fishing in the River Sow last year in Coventry, England, local resident Will Reed and his 2 sons discovered 64 lead cubes bearing mysterious ancient rune-like markings and inscriptions. The artifacts were rather small, with 47 of the cubes measuring just 2 centimeters long. The 13 other, more crudely made cubes were even smaller. Tiny enough to be picked up by the thumb and forefinger, the cubes were first mistaken for worthless debris. Based on social media responses, Reed believes that the inscriptions are a Hindu prayer ritual carved in Sanskrit, and that the prayers were thought to take effect when the cubes were thrown into running water. Writing for Coventry Live, journalist Josh Layton suggested that the cube faces contain a numerical equation meant to summon the protection of Rahu, a planet with godlike powers under the Hindu belief system. The arguably most credible theory holds that the cubes feature mystical worship diagrams called yantra. Similar objects have reportedly been found elsewhere. But the artifacts have not been definitively dated, leaving Reed and his following of intrigued social media users to speculate about their origins. Even more perplexing is the fact that the objects that appeared to be Indian were found in an English river. Additionally, the mudlarkers found a dozen pennies punched with a square hole in the center, as well as a coin featuring the Hindu goddess Durga on one side and the word Shri on the other. After returning to the undisclosed site several times, Reed summed up his experiences by saying, "The more I learn, the stranger it becomes. Ain't it always the way?" For now, the identity of the people who created the obviously out-of-place cubes and the nature of their journey from India to Europe remains a mystery. Sakara Bird. Many mysterious artifacts have been unearthed at ancient Egyptian archaeological sites, reflecting the cryptic disconnect between modern humanity and our understanding of the ancient world. One of the most mystifying objects is the so-called Sakara Bird. Discovered in 1898 at the vast necropolis of Sakara, the artifact dates back to around 200 BC. Made from sycamore wood, it's rather small, with a wingspan of just 7.1 inches. To this day, scientists remain stumped about the object's possible use. Because the falcon represents several important Egyptian gods, some believe that the Sakara bird had a ceremonial purpose. Others have suggested that it was a toy belonging to an elite child, a boomerang, or that it functioned as a weather vane. More imaginative folks have suggested that the artifact, which bears an uncanny resemblance to an airplane, proves that flying technology existed during ancient times. Some have even gone as far as saying that the Egyptians may have invented the first aircraft, which archaeologists have never found evidence of. Naturally, mainstream experts largely reject the idea that the object represents a flying machine. Richard P. Hallion, the Pentagon's senior advisor for air and space issues, pointed out that the Sakara Bird is far too heavy and unstable to fly, essentially ruling out the possibility that it represents an aircraft that took off from the ground in the absence of modern technology. What the Sakara Bird meant to ancient Egyptians might be a secret lost forever to history. They took it with them to the grave. Terracotta head. The peculiar object known as the Tecahik Calixtlahuaca head was discovered in 1933 in Mexico's Toluca Valley, northwest of Mexico City. Made from terracotta, the figurine was unearthed from a burial dating back to sometime between 1476 and 1510 AD. It seems to resemble a Roman artifact, calling its origins into question. Some have suggested that the head is evidence of pre-Columbian contact between Rome and indigenous people of the Americas. Is this a huge archaeological coincidence or what? Archaeologist Jose Garcia Payon found the head inside a pyramid beneath 3 floors, along with numerous other objects, including items made from gold, copper, turquoise, rock, crystal, bone, shell, and more. A paper published in 2001 by researchers argues that the figurine dates back to 2nd century Rome based on its hairstyle and beard. The pair of researchers believe that a Roman ship may have gone adrift and reached the Central American shoreline centuries before Columbus and other explorers arrived. These claims came after the objects were dated to sometime between the 9th century BC and the 13th century AD, during the pre-Columbian era, lending potential credibility to this seemingly outlandish theory. Nobody has come up with a solid explanation for the out-of-place artifact. While experts believe that it's a hoax, others entertain the possibility that a European visitor brought it to the Americas, maybe during the colonial era. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Mohenjo Daro. Around 4,500 years ago, an Indus River Valley culture that was impressively advanced for its time lived in what is now Pakistan. Their settlement, known as Mohenjo Daro, boasted numerous sophisticated architectural features, including a drainage system and an organized street grid. It was a prosperous city, and it's believed they worshipped some type of mother goddess. The city's ruins were discovered in 1911, and to this day, archaeologists know almost nothing about the people who lived there. There are no signs of a ruler or a central governing body, such as temples, palaces, and monuments. So Mohenjo Daro gives experts little to go on when it comes to learning about who lived here. What might grab your attention the most at the site is a pool on top of a dirt mound called the Great Bath. Was it decorative? Did people swim in it? Who knows? It's likely that someone must have ruled, and perhaps this great bath built on a mound was where the government or the rulers met. This great bath could be related to modern Hinduism, representing some type of worship of the river. The most interesting thing about this is that it seems like everyone was equal. Despite its apparent lack of leadership, the city bears evidence of being tightly controlled, standardized, and wealthy. We just don't know who controlled it. Expensive building materials and artifacts made from luxury materials like ivory and gold testify to Mohenjo Daro's former glory. Experts only know what they can glean from the limited array of artifacts left behind at the site. There are gold and terracotta statues of girls dancing, all kinds of animals such as birds, monkeys, and dogs, and a few seals with the swastika symbol, which is common in Indian religions such as Hinduism and Jainism. Archaeologists were shocked at the first sculptures of people that they found because the human figure was captured so well. The statues looked almost Greek, but they were made 3,000 years before. In addition to not knowing who the city's inhabitants were, researchers are left wondering why Mohenjo Daro abruptly collapsed, leaving just a handful of people behind. Evidence of alien contact. According to ancient aliens, the Maya, along with many ancient cultures, seem to have had knowledge of math and science that came directly from the gods. How was their knowledge so advanced? It must have been ancient astronauts that came down to Earth. But when wars began and natural disasters struck, civilizations fell, and these alien visitors left Earth, taking their technology with them. In 2011, a Mexican government official announced that a new documentary and a collection of recently declassified artifacts would soon prove that the Mayans had contact with ancient aliens. Raul Julia Levy, who produced the film titled Revelations of the Mayans 2012 and Beyond, told Reuters that the Mexican government would soon release codices, artifacts, and significant documents proving the documentary's claims. At the time, the items were being kept in secure underground vaults, according to a press release from State of Campeche Tourism Minister Luis Augusto Garcia. He also spoke of the alleged presence of 3,000-year-old spacecraft landing pads in the Central American jungle. Julia Levy claimed that for thousands of years, the Mayans planned to rule the planet, but some unwelcome otherworldly visitors reportedly showed up and left behind evidence of their presence. That's why people should take them seriously, because what they are going to share with us is crucial to human survival. The filmmakers promised to back up their claims with factual evidence, but as I'm sure you're not surprised to learn, this hasn't happened yet. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of the whole ordeal is that they managed to get a government official's backing. In 2018 and 2019, archaeologists made incredible discoveries in Mexico, from a treasure trove of artifacts in a cave to an entire lost city the size of Manhattan. The incredible discoveries are putting the Maya back on the map, and everyone is excited about what we might find next. Roman dodecahedron. No Roman artifacts have stumped experts as much as the dodecahedron. These bizarre artifacts are not mentioned in Roman texts, and over 200 experts have unsuccessfully tried to determine their use. Some believe that dodecahedra were somehow used in astronomical equations, such as calculating the best time for planting winter crops, or as surveying instruments for measuring land distances. The most credible theory suggests that the objects were used for knitting or crocheting. One student even tested the idea and created a glove. It's also possible that dodecahedra were nothing more than decorations or children's toys. The dodecahedra are small, hollow copper alloy objects with 12 flat pentagonal faces that have holes of varying diameters in the center. They range in size from 1.6 to 4.3 inches and date back to between the 2nd and 4th centuries. The first dodecahedron was found in 1739. Since then, at least 116 of them have been discovered throughout Central Europe. The southernmost dodecahedron was found in Arles, France, and the northernmost appeared near Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain. For nearly 3 centuries, the object's purpose has remained a mystery. Found in an unusual variety of places, including public baths, temples, and military camps, dodecahedra lack the consistency needed to gain useful archaeological context. They have also appeared in coin hoards, indicating that they may have been valued objects. But why then did the Romans not talk about them? For being so common, they are utterly mysterious. What do you think they were used for? Let me know in the comments below. First, seismoscope. Humanity's quest to understand and predict earthquakes dates back at least 2,000 years to the invention of the first seismoscope in China. Zhang Heng was an inventor, historian, mathematician, astronomer, and geographer, a jack of all trades. He presented his device to the Han Dynasty court in 132 AD, and he called it an instrument for measuring the winds and the movements of the earth. Measuring nearly 6 feet in diameter, the seismoscope was a giant cylindrical bronze vessel with 8 dragons on the side marking the primary compass directions. Each dragon had a ball in its mouth, and there were 8 bronze toads below, waiting with their mouths open to catch the balls. Nobody knows exactly what the seismoscope looked like, but those are the details that researchers generally agree on. One record claims that the instrument was intricately engraved with mountains, tortoises, birds, and other animals. Right before an earthquake happened, a ball dropped into a frog's mouth, making a sound that alerted people to the impending disaster. The ball that fell would point toward the earthquake's origin, but it told nothing of the earthquake's intensity. The seismoscope proved to be incredibly valuable to the ancient Chinese for its predictive abilities. For example, several days after a ball dropped into a toad's mouth in the Han Dynasty capital of Luoyang, messengers arrived from Gansu province to report a major earthquake that had happened over 1,000 miles away. In the following centuries, other creative minds improved the device as its use spread across Asia. The Persians developed a similar instrument during the 13th century, although it's unknown whether they came up with the idea independently or were inspired by the Chinese. Modern experts have no idea how the seismoscope worked. There are theories about a pendulum or a stick on the inside triggering a dragon to release a ball, but this remains unproven. Iron Pillar of Delhi. At 24 feet high, an iron pillar is the centerpiece of the ruins of northern India's oldest mosque at the Qutub complex in Delhi's Morali neighborhood. Although it weighs over 6,614 pounds, it was likely constructed somewhere else before being moved to its present location. This gargantuan 1,600-year-old monument is famous for its rust-resistant qualities. Archaeologists and other experts have long been fascinated by its lack of corrosion despite its age, especially in Delhi's weather, which fluctuates between hot, cold, dusty, and rainy. The pillar was once topped with an animal, which was probably removed during the Sultanate period because the imagery violated Islamic beliefs. It has a 4th century inscription in the Sanskrit language and Brahmi script. Known as the Gupta Brahmi, the carving is named after the Gupta Empire, which reigned throughout northern and central India between the 4th and 7th centuries. The inscription tells how King Chandra erected the pillar as a testament to his battle victories and dedicated the structure to the Hindu god Vishnu. There were 2 rulers named Chandra, but the message refers to Chandragupta II, who reigned from 375 to 415. One legend claims that the Sultan Iltutmish brought the pillar to Delhi, which was his capital, as a trophy. Another story holds that a king named Anangapal moved the structure to Delhi when he founded the city during the 11th century. On top of the mystery of how the pillar reached the site, its pristine state begs the question of how and why it doesn't rust. It's not likely an otherworldly or alien object, as it might be easy to assume, given its remarkable success against time and the elements. The structure was made using a practice known as forge welding, which caused a protective chemical coating to form over the iron during the smelting process. While the method itself was rather primitive, it afforded the advantage of preserving the pillar for thousands of years to come. At the same time, the monument stands as a reminder of the ingenuity of India's earliest ironsmiths. Thanks for watching! Which discovery was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!